You're watching PowerNation.
Today on Detroit Muscle, it's what's on the inside that counts. Project Fastlane's interior gets the boost it needs before we dive into the engine bay.
Hey y'all, welcome to Detroit Muscle. We've got our Fastlane Fox Body back here in the shop in efforts to keep moving forward. Now Peyton's creation is really coming along. The focus that we're going to be on today is this inner beauty.
Well, Tommy couldn't be more right. The outside of this car really has come a long way. It's made a pretty big visual transformation. But now the inside's getting a little jealous, and we got a handful of goodies to take it up to the next level. We're going to start by installing our Maximum Motorsports roll bar. So we're going to go ahead and test fit this, and since this is a weld in or bolt in, we're going to mark the floor mat here, or the sound deadening, so we can remove it and get a good weld on the floor.
Sounds good, man.
With a little surface prep, we're ready to break out the welder. Well, with the main hoop installed, now we can go ahead and put in the rear support bars. But first, I need to put these reinforcement plates in to keep this sheet metal from bending and bowing. So we'll just mark it out like that, get it ground out and tacked in. So there's another plate that will go on the back side of this panel, but in order to get it to sit flush, we're going to have to drill out these rivets. We've got our first support bar tacked in and our second one cut to length. We're going to go ahead and fully weld the bottoms, but not the tops. We've got some panels for our rear seat delete that we're going to cut with a hole saw and actually slide down, and then we'll fully weld the top. So the teeth on a hole saw are actually quite coarse, and aluminum being a really soft material will actually cause it to bite down and leave a nasty hole. So a good rule of thumb is to run your pilot bit in and forward, but then when you actually go to cut your hole, run the drill in reverse. Now the teeth are still sharp enough to cut through the aluminum, but it won't mar it up. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect, so come back with a file and just clean up these edges to get rid of any sharp burrs. Ooh. With the rear panels in, we can finish up the welding and lay down a little black paint. Well, we're ready to put the carpet back in, and we're going to reuse the one that came with the car. It's already got all the cutouts for the seats and the shifter, so it's easier. But we will have to make a few cuts for our new roll bar. Get Niles to help me stretch this out here.
Under a dash first, right?
Yeah. Nice thing is it's already kind of molded because, you know, it's been in the car.
I honestly think that's pretty close to where we need to be. Is it close?
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's time to finish up our rear seat delete. We'll be using these support pieces that go in the side panels here to hold them up. Just use a self-tapper and run them in on the line between plastic and carpet. We are ready for the lower seat delete panels now that the carpet's back in, and we will use some Clecos to hold it in place. With the interior on the Mustang about wrapped up, we've got to have somewhere to sit. So we picked up these seats from Summit Racing. They're a race style seat featuring harness holes and bolstered sides, but they also recline and have adjustability forward and backwards. To get them in the car, we needed some adapter brackets that we also got from Summit Racing. They are specifically for our Mustang. All that's left is to get them bolted in. So this kit comes with a square-headed bolt that slips down in the tracks. And then just bolts right onto the new adapters.
All right, seat delivery for Peyton Pittman.
Cool, let's get this thing slapped in here.
All right, guide me in.
All right, use these bottom holes on the front here.
Door close.
Cool.
Okay, yeah, cool, we got clamp. Feels nice, actually.
Works perfectly. Up next, we're turning up the heat to cool this horse down. Well, we've made quite a bit of progress catching the interior up with the exterior, but this ratty old steering wheel, it's gotta go. The top of it's worn out from years of use, plus it still has the cruise control, which we no longer have that option. With our interior upgrades most of the way done, we've got a little bit more buttoning up to do in here, but first we're gonna move up under the hood. Today we're gonna be finishing a few things up under the hood, like installing our cold case radiator, as well as a few other components. We're starting with this Duralast AGM battery that we found at the AutoZone Pro website. Now we went with an AGM battery for its superior starting as well as life cycle. Plus it'll be going in the trunk of the car, so we want a non-spillable battery. So another reason we went with the AGM battery is our power demand. We have a lot of extra systems on this car that require their own power, like our EFI, our air conditioning, and a host of other sensors, plus 2 electric fans. We'll secure the battery with this heavy-duty tray and hook up our cables. Well, the time has finally come to install our cooling system. We're going to start with this 4-core radiator from Cold Case. But I believe we're going to have to custom fab a holder for the top, so we'll get started on that. First, I'm going to hold it in with some zip ties. We'll start by making a few measurements, and then we can get going on fabbing up our mount. Well, I went ahead and sheared the piece that we're going to be using for our radiator support, but before I put it in our brake, I'm going to throw a little bit of masking tape on it to keep from getting any scratches on it. Now that I've got the face side protected, I can go ahead and lay out my bends and get them broke. So this first brake line will be the hook that actually hooks onto the front of the car, and then we'll bend it to a 90-degree angle, and then our next brake will jump us up to the radiator, and then our final brake will be coming down on the back side to capture the radiator in. Without access to a brake, you could use the edge of a workbench, a 2x4, and some C-clamps. Good 90 there. Well, we've got our first bend done. Now we just have to mark out our other two and make sure that we keep the right distance for the radiator to fit in. I'm gonna make my inside bend first instead of the outside, because if I make the outside, well, then it won't fit back in the brake. Well, we've got our cover fabbed up, and all that's left is to get it attached. And I think I'm gonna use a few nutserts in the front and a couple of bolts, and then we'll put some rubber of some sort under it to cushion it from rocking back and forth. Well, the next step is to install our steering shaft that we got from Maximum Motorsports. Now we gotta have something to connect our pretty new steering wheel to the steering rack. This steering shaft is a heavy-duty factory replacement that gets rid of the rag joint. Well, we've made some pretty good progress on our Mustang's engine bay. A few more things and she'll be ready to rip and roar. If you like 119 miles an hour and a high-dollar hot rod, you're gonna like what we've got next. Well, when it comes to our Mustang, we've got one thing in mind, and that's going fast. But we won't be taking ours to the strip anytime soon, but Dodge had similar ideas when they introduced their Coronet.
That thing got a Hemi? Yes, it does. The year was 1965, and Chrysler offered its infamous engine to the public for the very first time. To get one, though, you had to fork over an extra $1,800 and sign away your warranty.
That's because this engine was in full race tune, built to power Dodge's factory-modified super stock Coronet, a car designed with one thing in mind: to win at the strip.
Well, that's exactly what Harmon Friend was looking for back in '65, and he was one of the lucky few to get his hands on one.
The surge of power in this thing feels like you're getting shot out of a cannon.
He raced harm's way all over the Midwest, drawing lots of attention with his roller skate wheelie bars. His goal was to break a record, and he promised his wife he'd sell the car as soon as he did.
The Hemi found its way into the Coronet when NASCAR banned the engine after Dodge used it to completely annihilate the competition in the '64 season. Chrysler packed up its things and poured all its resources into drag racing.
The Coronet was Dodge's new mid-size model and a perfect fit for the 426. Only 101 units were built to meet the NHRA quota. Dodge did everything they could to lighten the car while still sticking to the new super stock rules.
That meant no aluminum bodies or plexiglass windows. Dodge had a few tricks up its sleeve to get around all that, like acid dipping the fenders and hood and using thinner glass for the windows.
Even the race Hemi got the weight loss treatment with cast aluminum cylinder heads and a magnesium intake.
Then they went to work hitting the delete button. Inner headlights and right-hand wiper delete, rear seat delete, visor, dome light, coat hook delete, radio and heater delete. They even got rid of the parking gear.
Yeah, and notice the reverse pattern, RN12D. That's so you could shift from first to second to drive without accidentally throwing it into reverse.
Plus, the tranny had a high stall torque converter to feed the RPM-hungry Hemi. The setup was nicknamed Dial a Win because it was so dang dependable on the track.
Dodge dominated the strip that year, with Bob Harrop's Coronet winning the NHRA Nationals. Arm raced his car for 4 years until he set an AHRA class record of 119 miles an hour at Norwalk Dragway. He kept his word and sold the car, never thinking he'd see the car again, but history had something else in store.
Over a year ago, I got a phone call. He says, "You don't know us. We know a little bit about you. We have your old race car." And I thought to myself, what?
The car had been found and brought to Danny Proctor, who had it restored by the guys at Pro Classics.
We started with a really big bucket of bolts and just really think we transformed it into something really nice after a year and a half of hard work.
Matt made sure he returned it to OE specs before he showed it to Harm.
I had tears in my eyes. The first time I walked up to it, I had tears in my eyes.
The car that cost him about $4,400 brand new is now worth way more than that.
See, I tell you, you shouldn't have sold this thing.
While we may not be running a Hemi, we still think Harm would be pretty proud of our rad ride. This Mustang's fuel system is still stuck in the 90s. We can fix that coming up next. Welcome back to the shop. Today, it's all about fuel. Now, this old system doesn't quite support the 600 horsepower that our car is making now. So we've got a new kit from back to front that'll get the fuel at a higher volume. Hey Niles, you mind bringing in that jack so we can support this tank?
Yeah, gotcha.
Cool. Get this out of the way. Start running that up. Don't get it up and bolted.
So we're done with this tank?
Well, we're done with the tank, but we're just gonna reuse the sending unit as well as the vent and put them in our new tank. I'll get started doing that if you want to pull those old fuel lines out.
Sounds good.
Cool. Niles and I are doing a little divide and conquer on the fuel system. The old lines were rusty and weak in a few spots, and the tank, well, it had some rust in the bottom. I'd definitely say I got the easier job this time.
First thing that we're installing in our fuel system is this pre-filter. And this is the original bracket, but this is a new filter. I did have to modify the bracket a little bit, but this should work fine. Up next, we're installing this inline fuel pump. This flows 255 liters per hour and will support up to 600 horsepower. I'm gonna mount that right here on the lower frame rail, and this is the perfect location because we have our fuel filter right there, and this gives us a straight shot to the front of the vehicle. I'm marking the 2 mounting holes and drilling them with a 3/8 bit. Then pressing in a rib nut and 2 1/4-inch bolts hold everything in place. All right, I'll tilt it to your side.
Yep.
You good?
Yeah, I just gotta pull this filler neck down, so. All right. Oh, we are in.
That bolt's gonna fall on your eyeball. I already know.
What is your major malfunction?
Like Atlas supporting the world. Right there on the diff cover.
While Niles does the heavy lifting, I start reinstalling the tank straps and bolts. That is, if I can find my tools.
Oh, there's a spider web.
One of the bolts decided to give us a little trouble, but with a little elbow grease, we got it done.
No, it's going into it.
Come on.
Yeah.
This Edelbrock fuel system comes with everything needed to plumb your ride. It has a new inline fuel pump as well as pre and post pump filters. This kit also provides new supply and return lines and all the fittings to hook it up. Well, I'm gonna poke a hole here in the fender liner so we can run our fuel lines in and install our grommet to keep them from rubbing, and we'll be good. The final part of our Edelbrock fuel system is this EFI regulator, which we're going to mount to the firewall using the supplied bracket. We had to do a slight modification to our regulator mount to make it fit our application. Then we could get our fittings screwed on. With a little help from Niles, we got a lot accomplished today. Got the interior back in the car, a little work done under the hood, and our fuel system run. And that's all I've got time for today. Thank you for watching Detroit Muscle.